Now we talked about earlier about the sticker number 33 right there. Another sticker that was a little bit confusing for me and maybe for some other people. So if you don't have the HissTank version 5, hopefully this will help you out. And it is number 28. As you can see, it says on the inside of the cockpit, and you can also see what looks like some type of G.I. Joe jet right above in the upper left corner. So not only does it say inside the cockpit, but it also has the diagram there where it looks more like it's on the outside of the door, but again, because it has that plane, most likely it's supposed to fit on the inside. Now we'll show you what happens though with it being on the inside. So here's sticker number 28. As you can see, this is where I believe it goes on the inside of the cockpit, because as you can see, it's quite a bit of bumpy areas on the inside and no really flat area for it to go. So I've never had to do this for a sticker before, but it's basically going from one bar to another bar, and then the rest of the sticker is just kind of hanging there. So I'm not sure. Maybe people have been putting it up against the wall right there on the release trigger, which might work, but again, if you do put it there, then it hopefully will not be ripped or anything when you push the release trigger button on the top. So just some ideas of where that goes. So if anyone else has a video of them putting it in a certain spot, or how you think it looks in a certain spot, definitely would be interesting to see what you decided to do with that sticker. So another thing I wanted to make sure that I did point out is that you do have a Gatling gun right here, as I mentioned, but you can also have it rotate by this little spindle right there. So I just wanted to make sure to point that out. It does get a little bit of warpness to it while it's in the box, but so that's why you can kind of see, like right there, it's kind of warped. And you can always do it, you can kind of unwarp it by putting it in some water that you've kind of microwaved, but be very careful because it could be very soft afterwards, but once it cools, some people put it in the freezer. You might be able to fix that, but you would have to take off the whole thing and microwave some water and then stick it in there for a little bit, just test it, and then you should be able to get it to go straight again. So I might attempt to do that. Just be careful if you do it after you put on the sticker, because we don't want to lose that sticker. So here I thought we would get back to what I see this staff that comes with both the HissTank version 5, even though it's not painted, and also comes with Cobra Commander from the Pursuit of Cobra line. I haven't seen anything officially from Hasbro on this, so this is my own interpretation of it. I always do my best to make connections, and I do my best to do thought videos. And so one of my thoughts was, when I first saw this either online or was able to find it back in June, was this staff right here made me think more of medieval times when armies were going to battle, and it always seemed like they were carrying a banner, and I didn't know what that banner was called, that flag, but I always saw it as basically it was a way of saying who the king was or the country that was about to fight you. So I went looking and I did my best to find some information. So if anyone knows a little bit more about this, then please leave me a comment. I definitely would be very happy to learn and make sure I'm saying this correctly. But at least for myself, whether I get that comment or not, or information, I am seeing this when the Cobra Commander holds it as an Oriflame. It says that an Oriflame was first used by Louis VI in 1124 and was last flown in the battle at Anacourt in 1415. When the Oriflame was displayed on the battlefield, it indicated that no quarter was to be given, and hence it was called the Oriflame of Death. A victor gives no quarter when the victor shows no clemency or mercy and refuses to spare the life in return for the surrender at the discretion, unconditional surrender of a vanquished opponent. So that's basically what Cobra Commander is saying. When he holds this Oriflame, or he ends up giving it to either the HissTank Commander or someone else, he's basically saying, no matter what, we're coming after you, and there's nothing you can do. We're not gonna, take pity on you or anything like that. So then, while it is with the HissTank commander or the HissTank or anyone else that holds it, it is, in my opinion, called a Gaiden. It says that the significance of the Gaiden is that it represents the unit and its commanding officer. When the commander is in, his or her Gaiden is displayed for everyone to see. When he leaves for the day, the Gaiden is taken down. It is an honor, although sometimes a dubious one, to be the Gaiden carrier for a unit known as a Gaiden bearer or a guide. He or she stands in front of the unit alongside the commander or the commander's representative and is the rallying point for troops to fall into formation. When the order is given in drill and in ceremonies, the Gaiden and commander are always in front of the formation. The Gaiden is a great source of pride for the unit, and several military traditions have developed around it. Stemming back from ancient times, any sort of disgrace toward the Gaiden is considered a dishonor of the unit as a whole, and punishment is typical. For example, should the Gaiden bearer drop the Gaiden, he must fall with it and perform the punishment. Often, nowadays, in the form of push-ups. Other units may attempt to steal the Gaiden to demoralize or antagonize the unit. Veteran soldiers know not to give up the Gaiden to anyone outside their unit, but new recruits may be tempted into relinquishing it by a superior, especially during a unit run. So maybe I'm, thinking it's a Gaiden when it's on the vessel, and then the Oriflame when it is given to someone or held by the commander. So that's my thoughts right now, and tell me what you think about that. I really was really happy when I had that first thought, and I don't know if anyone else has thought of that as well. So we'll continue on with the rest of the video. And with this kind of group shot, because as you can see, there's quite a bit of stuff that gets us to the HissTank version 5 and different connections. And one of the connections I mentioned earlier, unless somebody has proof of it being used differently, it is always high-speed sentry. They just sometimes don't abbreviate it or spell it out. As you can see on this Arctic Hiss right there, we have H period I period S period S period, and it stands for high-speed sentry, but there are some other times that it has been released as the Hiss, and they don't always put those periods there. So I just wanted to show the Arctic HissTank. I don't have one of these open or anything like that, but it is a cool HissTank. And then I also wanted to bring in this back of the box of this HissTank, because as you can see it says 788, even though if we turn it around, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't. It just was a prototype photograph, and for some reason they must have gone for a different number. So there's 001. But the reason I bring 788 up is because if you don't want to do any spelling out of anything, you can just put 788 on both sides of your HissTank version 5. And then hopefully Dave, one of three Knights, doesn't mind me bringing this in. This was something that he shared with me. If you go on the back of the Pursuit of Cobra Commander figure right here, you will see that his file card or ID badge also has 0788. So I wanted to point that out because I thought that was really cool. That was not a connection that I made. So thanks, Dave, for helping me with that. And I will see you all later. Thank you. Bye. Hi, for those of you that have stayed past the last frame of the HissTank version 5 video, I did want to talk a little bit about variants. I'll do my best to not get these confused, but as you will see, it does get a little confusing, so if anyone wants to leave comments to help me out if I miss anything, I appreciate that. So how we're going to go in order this time, since I don't have a 1983, which was the first time that we got a HissTank, I'm going to start out with version 2, the HissTank number 2 right there. Then we have number 3, even though it looks very much like a HissTank number 1. Now the reason why was because when G.I. Joe was still not as popular as it is now, Toys R Us stood by us and was releasing a line of commemorative figures. They weren't maybe the best, but that's actually when I first started getting back into G.I. Joe, because growing up as a kid, I always saw aisles and aisles of G.I. Joe. So when I went back to my hometown and saw that there were some Joes, I was really shocked to see that in the time that I had grown up and moved away, G.I. Joe no longer was on the shelves. You can't find, shelves of walls and walls of G.I. Joe. Even now we're still having a hard time with getting some stores to carry G.I. Joe. So that was really quite a shock to me, but I did see some of the releases that they had, and at the time it was a pack of Vipers basically, and then later I saw a helicopter that was a re-release of the Dragonhawk with some changes, and then we also got the HissTank number 3 right here as a Toys R Us exclusive, even though it just looks like a HissTank number 1. So 1989, 2000, then we jumped to 2002 where we got the HissTank number 4, even though it actually looks much different than the version 3 and much different than number 2 since it's a different version. But I thought that was kind of interesting that a number 3 is what Toys R Us decided to call this one, because technically it was the number 3 release of the HissTank, but it just wasn't a different version. Then we jumped to 2004, and later in this video and in a few other videos that I pre-recorded, I'll show you that. But this is the 2004 KB exclusive, and then we move to the end here where we have the direct-to-consumer 2005 HissTank. Now after direct-to-consumer, it looks like we were then getting Valor versus Venom. So this HissTank was released again, but it was not called the HissTank number 4. It was still the same mold, but it looks like they've changed the gun. On top was more of a missile launcher, and they also changed the paint scheme. Now another thing is it looks like we've got a 2002 convention exclusive that was somewhat like the red one here, but this is the Crimson Sabotage. I don't have the red one from the convention, so it looked like it had different numbers and different stickers on it, more like the stickers that are on the Toys R Us number 3 there. Then it looks like after the convention of 2002, the convention of 2003 also got to release a HissTank variant, and that would be the HissTank number 2B as it's listed on the site that I'm looking at. And you can go here, I'll pull in an annotation where you can see all this, and you can see how it is a little bit confusing, at least to myself. So this was released as the HissTank number 2B, and it was repainted to be a darker blue, and it had a much more almost pinkish guns to it than this red that's here. So that was the HissTank number 2B of the convention of 2003.